Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Law Essentials welcomes you to the 26th edition of the webinar of the International Center for Intellectual Property Laws. Brendan O'Brien says, if you think that the internet has changed your life, think again. The Internet of Things is about to change it all over again. Our topic for today's webinar is Internet of Things and Legal Aspects. We have with us today Advocate Sai Sushanth. He's a cyber law expert and a techno-legal consultant. He is also the CEO of Sushanth IT Law Associates. He is an advisor at Law Essentials International Center on Intellectual Property Laws. We are privileged to have you today with us, sir. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you so much, Farhan. A very good evening to all the participants of this webinar and also to all the viewers who are watching us on YouTube. A very good evening to all of you. I hope that all of you are safe from COVID-19. And it's really, I believe that this is a golden age that we haven't seen so far in our lives. And more specifically, I can tell you that the internet has now become the new de facto mode, if not already in the country and the world. So I believe that everything and everything today is occupying primarily with the help of internet, and the gamut of internet has now tremendously increased with a lot of people joining the digital bandwagon. So I believe that COVID-19 has been playing a very important role in pushing the numbers of internet users to a great extent, because when you start comparing before COVID and after COVID, like we had BC and AC, I believe that there are going to be a large number of companies as also individuals who already started to go on the internet and become part of the digital bandwagon. So I believe this kind of a situation, it's very important that we actually try to talk on this interesting topic of Internet of Things and law, specifically the legal aspects. So I would like to once again thank Law Essentials, the Center, the International Center for Intellectual Property Studies, and specifically Farhan for demonstrating their thought leadership in coming up with these kinds of programs, which are presently the need of the hour. So without getting much into the introductory part, I'd just like to start off. Could we go to the next slide, please? So fundamentally, I thought I should just first clarify what kind of IoT devices that are available currently with us, and how IoT is playing an important role in each of us personal, professional, as also social lives. So basically, when I talk of Internet of Things, it's very clear that any device that is getting connected to internet, that becomes an IoT device. So no matter whatever be the device, whether it's your mobile phone, whether it's your tablet, whether it's your smart TV, whether it's your smart refrigerator, whether it's your smartwatch, whether it's any of your Fitbit kind of devices, specifically anything and everything that basically gets connected to the internet can be in short called an Internet of Things enabled device. So that being so, I believe that today in this era of digital technology, IoT has already become a part and parcel of our lives, because I see that a majority of us either have a smartwatch or have a smart gadget like smart TV, or make use of apps like the health related apps, or if not, also make use of the IoT devices like the Amazon Alexas, Google Homes of the world. So I believe that by and large, most of us, rather most people on the internet today are also making use of internet enabled devices. No, not just that, but there are also some other ways in which IoT devices are actually trying to penetrate into our lives. Not just that, we are also making use of a lot of sensors for the purpose of actually getting connected to the internet. Your phone has got a variety of sensors. Your car, your vehicle has got a large number of sensors. And more specifically, I can tell you that the internet enabled cars are also started in India. When you look at this particular brand called MG Gloucester, it's now supposed to be India's first autonomous vehicle which is capable of getting connected to the internet as also it's an IoT based car, shall I say. And not just that, a lot of vehicles today are working on sensor technology, where they identify anything and everything using the sensors which are embedded onto the vehicles. So that being so, I think Internet of Things is predominantly already something that's arrived, and not that's not something that is there in the horizon. But I believe it's already now started to catch all our attention. There's no denying the fact that internet is network of networks, but now what becomes important is what kind of applications that IoT devices have are something that's tremendously increasing over the landscape. And there are lots of legalities and legal aspects that are now popping up with the tremendous use of IoT. So I just thought I should just put forth some of the viewpoints from a legal perspective and also from the application perspective, so as to ensure that we discuss some of the major concepts relating to IoT and law. So this is the whole gamut of my presentation today. So I hope I would take you to some of the latest developments and also some interesting case studies that we have in order to make things more clear. And let's all understand that we're still in the process of transition where we're trying to come up with a legal framework, laws, and jurisprudence relating to IoT. So I believe conferences and webinars like this would play a very important catalytic kind of a role in trying to determine the legal landscape of these emerging technologies and law. Let's go to the next slide, please. So I thought I would start out with a very fundamental concept of smart TVs. I believe most of us today are owners of smart TVs. Wonderful, excellent, and we are habituated to all of these smart devices that we operate. And at the convenience of our home, I believe there are a lot of people operate smart TVs from their bedrooms. So specifically, I thought I should just bring forth a small interesting case that has happened in Malaysia a couple of years back. This is called the smart TV case, where uh, all your smart TVs have got a wonderful option of actually giving you an attachment to add your cameras, whether it's the Skype cameras, whether it's any other sort of cameras. You can actually plug in the kind of Skype cameras onto your smart televisions, and you can do video chatting. You can do video calls and things like that. Wonderful, excellent. So at the just at your comfort of your bedroom, you're trying to use the smart television for the purpose of communicating to your families who are all there across the globe. That's an excellent development. But there's a small thing that we'll all have to be aware of. When you are actually trying to operate smart televisions, fundamentally, we'll all have to understand that these smart televisions get connected to your wireless network, which is typically called as Wi-Fi. So they get connected to your Wi-Fi network, and then that's how the internet connectivity is established between the device that is your smart TV. And more specifically, that I can tell you that this case happened in a very different manner altogether. So husband and wife were doing a lot of activities, personal talks and things like that in their home bedroom. And lo and behold, they had this smart television, and they also had the smart camera because they were continuously trying to chat and do video calls to their family members across the globe. So one fine day, they found that the footage of their private moments had got viral, and it was hosted on a public network. Well, they were absolutely astonished looking at the same, but lo and behold, little did they realize that it was a smart television that actually tried to capture the private moments without the consent of this particular family. But let me just tell you that these are just examples of how the privacy breaches can typically take place using these smart devices. I don't wish to talk to you about the negative effects and things like that, but I only wish to uh, draw some inferences that it is not advisable that we have these smart televisions specifically in places where you have private conversations. So I would advise that in case you're having these smart televisions in your bedrooms, think twice because these cases are has typically changed the legal landscape of IoT based devices. Not just that, apart from that, when you have these cameras on, one of the fundamental aspects that will come to picture is it's not just the data privacy, but there's also going to be personal privacy that's likely to get impacted much more. So this is some interesting scenario that I thought of sharing with you. So let's go to the next slide, please. Okay. Now, in a corporate companies, in corporate companies today, we have all these smart kind of devices, whether it's your smart microwave ovens, whether it's your smart refrigerators and things like that for the comfort of their employees. Wonderful. Excellent. Now, the situation here is that in a corporate company, uh, spam was actually sent through a IoT-based smart microwave oven. Now, you will say, how couldn't spam been transmitted using these microwave ovens? Simple. The reason is that the smart microwave ovens actually take the connectivity of internet from your Wi-Fi network. And typically, if I'm able to compromise your Wi-Fi network, then I can use these devices for n number of activities that includes sending spam and doing any kinds of legitimate or illegitimate activities. So this is one more such example that I thought I should share with all of you, because this kind of scenarios are very relatively new, and I believe that the usage of these are by and large for used for a variety of purposes, and we should also be prepared that wherever there are some of these technologies, they're also likely to be impacted in the negative manner. Next slide, please. Now we also started to see something called a smart refrigerator network attack. So in this company, a smart refrigerator was actually used to collapse the network of the company, because the reason is again simple. As you're able to see on the screen, these smart devices get connected to your Wi-Fi network, and typically once there is a loophole, we call this as piggybacking, when somebody makes unauthorized use of your Wi-Fi without your permission and control. But however, it's also amounting to cyber crime, and it's also amounting to cyber breach. But nevertheless, these kinds of attacks are just illustrations and are constantly evolving as time passes by. So this is one more such instance where a smart refrigerator was used to collapse the network of a company. The next slide, please. So all along, we thought we can drink water. Then came the concept of smart water, where companies said they're trying to come up with mineralized waters. Now, just think, for example, that you have an internet-connected water bottle. Wow, excellent! You will be able to understand the percentage of purity of the water. Lovely, wonderful. You have the smart bottles, but lo and behold, you also have these water bottles that connect to the fitness and health apps, where they try to give you the exact medical and health related conditions of the kind of water that you're drinking. Excellent. That's going to be enormous in terms of the medical field, because it's going to be a very good invention and innovation that will be able to give you some constant update on the kind of water that you're drinking, the kind of medicinal values that your water has, and is it pure, and it will basically help you to understand different parameters of the water that you're drinking. That's wonderful. But what happens to all of these data? That's going to be something that's going to go six, because the reason here is that when you try to integrate this kind of applications with your smart devices, just think the kind of interconnectedness that it has, and think about the data ownership, the data flow, and things like that from a legal perspective. But that's going to be really a challenging aspect. So I believe these are just broad issues on the horizon, but I believe that while we are all seeking answers to these kind of things, I think nothing is stopping us from coming up with new kinds of inventions altogether. Next slide, please. Now, we thought it's not just the water bottle that could be consumed. Just imagine that you have an IoT based shower. You get into your washroom, you want to go for a good shower, and then you have these wonderful smart showers that are able to get controlled with your voice, with your phone, and you can typically do any kinds of activities by setting temperatures, by doing all sorts of activities using these devices. Wonderful, excellent. We are not even we are exploiting technology to the core. I believe that we are not dirtying our hands, but we are trying to propel a different use of technology altogether. But just try to think that these kinds of digital shards can be the source point for actually doing a lot of variety of breaches and other activities with regard to the data. So I believe when you're trying to go for these shards, please look at the terms and conditions and also try to understand if there are any policies with regard to the usage of these devices. So this is something I thought I should just put forth when you look at these smart gadgets. Next slide, please. Now, it's not just confined to the showers. Now, we also started to have the IoT ACs where you can control your AC temperature, you can control the AC with the help of your mobile phone, as also there are Wi Fi enabled ACs, which are again IoT based devices and which get connected. Again, there's an intertwining connection between these devices, whether it's your Amazon Alexas or Google Assist and things like that. You can typically do a voice control with regard to the temperatures of your AC, and then typically control your air conditions using your mobile phone as also your voice. Wonderful. We had this beautiful case that had come to us a couple of years back where IoT ACs were beginning to come into the Indian market. We had one of the corporate companies who thought, hey, let's try to install IoT ACs in our server room so that we would be constantly able to monitor the temperatures of the air conditioners, specifically related to the servers, because any increase in the temperature would actually create heating issues in terms of the server and would make the servers get overloaded, overheated, and things like that. So in order to prevent the overheating of these servers, they thought this is a wonderful idea that they can make use of. But so they went on to install three air conditioners in the servers' rooms, which were actually enabled with the help of IoT. That means you can control the IoT based AC with the help of your voice or with the help of your mobile phone. Excellent. So they were sitting at their home, and the IT team was able to control, was able to understand the kind of temperature that the air condition had, because they were working on a huge project where a lot of algorithms were stored in the server. But unfortunately, two people in the technical team were fired due to some mistake of theirs, and they thought it's the best time that they can seek virtual vengeance. So what did they do? They tried to hack into the company's network and tried to increase the temperature of the air conditioners and started running these air conditioners at maximum temperatures. So what happened is that as a result, this started to happen on Saturday night, and the whole Sunday this started running. Monday, by the time the company noticed and then came and looked at it, already the algorithms got were not able to run because the server was already overheated, and as a result, the programs were actually not being able to run properly. But lo and behold, one golden rule that they done was they started having backups. So one of the golden rules that we'll all have to keep in mind is when you're actually trying to use the smart devices, try to go for backups. So if you're specifically installing these devices in your office or in your corporate companies, then lo and behold, please have a backup of all your data and servers data so that you do not land up in one such instance like this. So these are just fancy instances that I'm trying to just tell you. But I believe that people think that their conduct has got unnoticed. But no wonder in this kind of a scenario, it's going to be very interesting to see how the laws and legalities surrounding IoT will be handled. Next slide, please. Now, we thought we could just get away with gadgets, but just imagine that you're trying to have an IoT based shirt. Now, this particular shirt was actually available in the market. I don't know now, but it was launched by this company called Arrow, where they tried to come up with smart shirts where you could get connected to the internet, and your cuff was the point, which was actually having some kind of an IoT based chip or a sensor, shall I say. So that you can download an application as you're able to see on the screen. You can play your favorite song from there, and then you can send your LinkedIn profile, you can share your business cards, you can launch your apps, you can do a variety of different activities. But the question here is a lot of new offerings have been given by this company, and I believe that these kinds of environment are going to be very fertile for cyber criminals and attackers, because they come up with a lot of techniques to constantly try to attack your digital privacy. And I believe that large chunks of digital privacy has already started to get evaporated with the advent of these tools. I don't discourage you, but I only try to tell you that, see, there are some things that we'll all have to understand. Um, we should not be under the idea that, okay, we're walking in an unknown territory, or we're walking with something that's not our job. I believe as an individual, you'd not be a lawyer to know that, but of course, lawyers would also have to constantly understand about the kinds of legalities surrounding these smart gadgets and devices. So that's something that I thought I should wake all of you into. Next slide, please. Now, we thought Internet of Things is only for shirts. This is absolutely a mistaken phenomena. We also started to have a new concept called the Internet of Trousers. Now, as you're able to see, there are very good alerts that this particular trouser, Internet of Trouser, has. It gets connected to the internet, and it gives you a get up alert when you're supposed to get up. It gives you an option where you have to keep yourself on the pants on mode. And when you're have some issues with regard to the zip, it also gives you an alert. Wow, it's going to help you not to be embarrassed in front of the public. I do agree. But the right side image is something that I thought of definitely sharing with you. Look at the image there. When the region below your belly gets tightened, this particular trouser sends a signal to your fridge. And what does it do? Because fridge is also typically, if you have the smart refrigerator, this typically locks your fridge. And lo and behold, that this is an indication that you should stop overeating and you should reduce your diet. Look at the way how diet control is made. So this is where I said that the smart IoT devices are having intertwining disciplines where they're connected with numerous devices. That's where the complication lies. Because the moment you are all in the same network, I believe that they get interconnected very fast. So your smart gadgets can be preventing and resisting you to have your temptations. At the same time, look at the kind of data that's been available here. So your personal data, your health and medical conditions, your any kind of data, that demographic data, everything is getting stored across these smart devices. So this is also something I thought I should share with all of you. Let's go to the next slide. So now it's just one more particular instance where an IoT-based fish tank was put up in a casino, and lo and behold, that the casino's database was breached, making because of this fish tank. You will say, how? How can I actually try to breach a casino's database by using this IoT fish tank? Well, the criminals are very opportunistic, and they try to make use of every and any vulnerability that is existing here. So they try to actually take control of the casino's network. They try to enter into the casino's network with the help of this IoT-based fish tank, and they try to compromise the network of Wi-Fi network, and then started to get into the database of the casino, thereby causing a breach altogether. So I can just tell you that these are some very different kind of instances of cyber security breaches, data breaches, and cyber attacks. But I can tell you that these are going to be very interesting, and there are some things that are going to get more and more predominant with the concept of internet being advertently used by a lot of stakeholders. And apart from that, I can tell you that these are some things that will have to be accepted as the new way of our lives. Next slide, please. So when we look at IoT, I think one of the primary legal areas that we need to focus is regarding privacy, and more specifically, with now privacy being the fundamental right, thanks to the latest Supreme Court judgment. So increasingly now there are going to be a lot of different kinds of privacy-based challenges that we are all going to encounter with the help of IoT. So it's not just data privacy, but it's also going to be personal privacy. So personal privacy is something that's constantly relating to the images of a person, the private parts of a person, and things like that. So I believe that when you have these gadgets like the Google Glass, and now you also started to see that Apple has also now come up with smart glasses. It's also trying to get itself into the market. I believe all of these are very good examples that are actually revolutionizing the technology, but at the same time, they're going to engulf a lot of privacy related issues, not just from a data perspective, but also from the personal privacy perspective. So look at this image, and I believe that that will be able to tell you some kind of an understanding how IoT devices actually operate. So it says that I told you to pick up milk on the way home. Don't you listen to anything that I say. So there are constant reminders that are there. I believe these are just snapshots, but I think there is a lot of congregation of these kinds of devices that's happening with the advent of Internet of Things. So one area that we'll have to constantly stay alive is privacy, and I believe that now it's not just going to be the cyber laws or it's not going to be the IT acts and the IT rules that are going to be coming into the picture, but thanks to the fundamental right of privacy, that now you can also file a writ petition in the High Court or the Supreme Court because your fundamental right of privacy is now being breached. So that's also something that's constitutionally made available thanks to this latest Supreme Court judgment. Next slide, please. Well, all of us are trying to understand about Internet of Things. I just want to tell you that we already started to have a small kind of a law which is called the Indian Cyber Law. It's a very small piece of law, but if you ask me about the kinds of laws that are passed by independent India, and if you say if you list out some of the significant laws, I can tell you first is the Indian Constitution, then Indian Contract Act, and definitely the Indian Cyber Law will be definitely one of those three important legislations come up by the independent India. Because the reason is it covers anything and everything that is digital in nature. So if you're dealing basically with computers, computer systems, computer networks, computer resources, communication devices, as also data or information in the electronic format, lo and behold, now you have Indian cyber law that's going to be made applicable. So thanks to this, now anything and everything that's created using an electronic medium, that's become going to become electronic records. So any information and any data that is generated out of your IoT devices would become electronic records thanks to Section 21T of the IT Act. So therefore, what I mean to tell is that any records, any information, audio, video, image, or text that gets captured by these IoT devices would be now recognized under electronic records under specifically under the Indian IT Act. So that's something that I thought I should talk to you about. Next slide, please. Now, there's also something that I would like to talk about the IoT devices and manufacturers' perspective. Now, any particular IoT device, any particular IoT device manufacturer would now be covered essentially under the concept of Indian cyber law. Because the reason here is now the Indian cyber law, the IT Act, was amended in the year 2008. And for the first time, they came up with something called intermediaries, which is a game changing element, shall I say. The concept of intermediaries brought almost anybody and everything into the concept of intermediary. It says anything, anybody, any person who, on behalf of any other person or entity, receives, stores, or any electronic record and provides any service with respect to that record becomes an intermediary. So typically, I can also tell you that Law Essentials, who's an organizer of this particular webinar, is also an intermediary because they're trying to collect information, they collect and they're trying to give you a service as a webinar. So therefore, anybody and everybody who are actually trying to collect electronic records and are actually trying to provide services, they become intermediaries. So IoT devices which collect your information and give you some service, so they also become intermediaries. So they're now being covered under Section 21W of the IT Act. Which what does it mean? Which essentially means that they would have to exercise due diligence and would have to actually comply with the IT Act and the rules and regulations made there under. So any IoT device that actually captures electronic records of Indians would have to necessarily be compliant with the Indian IT Act. But when you look at by and large any of these providers and see how compliant they are, I can tell you that 99% of these devices are non-compliant. 0.5% may be aware of something, and the other 0.5% may be doing something more. But unfortunately, we live in a country which says ignorance of law is no excuse. So I don't see any reason why these people who are IoT device manufacturers should not be booked for violating the Indian cyber law under the IT Act and IT rules and regulations made there under. So next slide, please. The California was one of the first states in the country that has actually tried to do some work on IoT based laws. They have come up with this wonderful law called the Iot Security Law, where they tried to come up with some limited parameters for IoT device manufacturers, where they came up with some guidelines in stating that, hey, if you're an IoT based device manufacturer, then you would have to exercise reasonable security practices and procedures. And only if you have reasonable security practices and procedures, you will now be compliant with the law. You don't do that, you're now being exposed to penalties. So that is something that has actually now tried to slowly bring about a legislation, or shall I say, a legal thought process on IoT per se. But the large number of IoT based law legal aspects that are yet to be covered, but this is very specific to the security perspective. Next slide, please. So the IoT law, as I was talking to you about, talks about three things that we must ensure that while actually the device is based on the nature and function of device, it has to be also looking into the nature and function of device when it actually has to implement reasonable security practices and procedures. Second, whatever information has been collected, contained, and transmitted through these devices, that also has to have reasonable security practices and procedures. And third, the devices would have to be designed in such a way that they protect the device internally, and also apart from protection of the device internally, they should also protect the information which is residing in that particular IoT device. They should protect that reasonably from any unauthorized use or modification or access. I would say 100% protecting it from unauthorized access is only a myth, but that's why the law stepped in and came up with this guideline called reasonable security practices and procedures. So the nature and function of the device, the information, and protecting the information from unauthorized disclosures are the three kinds of obligations that this law brings on the manufacturers per se. Next slide, please. Now, what is this reasonable security feature? Let's go a bit more further. The law says that it's very specifically highlighting the concept of setting passwords. So, if you were to have reasonable security features in your IoT devices, the law says you should have a pre-programmed password which is unique to any device that is manufactured. So, every device is supposed to have a pre-programmed password, and at the same time, the device should contain a security feature that requires you to generate new means of authentication before granting. The authentication method is also something that the law has actually brought into the picture. Just excuse me for a second. Yeah, sorry, please. The law is very specifically talking about the kind of security features that the IoT devices should possess. So, since it's very specific to the IoT security perspective, could we go to the next slide, please? Now, I thought I should also share with you that these IoT devices are also having some kinds of issues with regard to cyber crimes and cyber contraventions. And with each passing day, month, and year, I believe that the list here is not exhaustive, it's only illustrative. So, the attacks have been mounted endlessly because this is a path of worldwide jungle. And I believe that what's going to be peeping into our activities is something that we'll all have to understand. So some contraventions and crimes, which are both civil and criminal in nature, I thought I should just put forth with you. Hacking, as a lot of IoT devices are prone to hack attacks. Data theft, because there's a lot of data that's been residing in these devices. There's all possibility that those data could be actually misused and could be copied unauthorizedly. We have the question of privacy and confidentiality that is coming in picture here, because the moment I'm disclosing, I mean, the devices take cognizance of any of the private or the confidential information, then that's going to be a big problematic affair, because any kinds of inadvertent disclosure or unauthorized disclosure could land, could be amounting to breach of confidentiality and privacy. Not just that, these devices, like I told you, can be capable of disseminating computer contaminants like virus, spam, malware, and other kinds of attacks. And there's also a very interesting concept of DDoS attacks. So we have something called DOS attacks, which is meaning distributed, denial of service attacks. And this is something called distributed denial of service attacks. So what do you mean by DOS attacks? Usually, when you deny a particular service to somebody, that becomes denial of service attack. For example, let's say that Google gives you an option of holding 15 GB data with your email, free storage. Beyond 15 GB, what happens? You'll have to either delete your old mails, and your email just gets clogged up. So thereby, you'll not be able to send email, you'll not be able to receive email. But take that for an instance that your IoT device, as I told you, has the capability of getting connected to various other devices, which are also smart devices. And just think, if all these devices are used to crash network, it's not just one device that's being used, it is more than one device that is being used. So if all these devices are used to launch an attack, then that becomes a DDoS attack, which is called distributed denial of service. If you're making use of one device, it becomes a DOS attack. If you're making use of more than one device, it becomes distributed denial of service attack. So this is also something that's going to be increasingly a problematic area, because given the nature of Internet of Things, with the intertwining and interconnected approach that the IoT as a technology possesses. So apart from that, a lot of unauthorized access and related contraventions can happen. So like I said, it could be unauthorized access, unauthorized download, unauthorized copy. A lot of things can come into picture when I talk of IoT devices. So IoT and cyber crimes are also going to be something that you'll have to constantly be aware of. Next slide, please. So ransomware, shall I say, is already the new jewel in the crown, and it has started to receive. It started to become the top of the pyramid during this period of COVID-19. Because the reason is, all along we thought that only people started. Let's take the example of ransom in the physical world. So in physical world, when you talk about ransom, I'm remembered of a scenario where people start kidnapping people, and then they start demanding ransom. You pay the ransom, they release this particular victim. So therefore, just imagine that you wake up and you get a message on your device stating that whether it's your laptop, whether it's your IoT based device, or whether it's your mobile phone, your tablet, and the like. Just imagine that you get a message, and lo and behold, that if these devices are interconnected with all the devices, I believe that all these devices get vulnerable. So just see, the image on the screen is just to tell you that all of these smart gadgets, in case they are actually facing ransomware attack, where all the devices are locked, and the passwords and the pins and the passcodes of these are vested with some XYZ, whom you're not even aware of, who may not even be from the same continent. So he demands you to pay a certain amount as a ransom. And typically, all these ransoms would be collected in cryptocurrencies, specifically, shall I say, bitcoins. So that's the kind of scenario that IoT devices are capable of when I talk of ransomware. So if you have everything and everything that's connected to the internet, then lo and behold, this is something you will have to be really aware of. Next slide, please. So when I talk of liability, I think one of the interesting parameters that I would like to talk to you is about the legal liability when I talk of Internet of Things. Now, in case of legal liability, there are going to be very interesting situations of damages, of negligence, of breach of duty, because I believe that breach of duty to care is nothing but negligence. If there is any malfunction with regard to the data, of course, there's a consumer protection law that also will come into picture here. IoT devices also would be capable of getting covered under the consumer protection laws. Product liability is something that would actually be talking about in case there is a design defect, strict product liability. Now, what happens to the kind of a warranty? The warranty is also something that we'll have to constantly look at, whether it's implied or express warranty. What happens in case of breach of warranty? Now, apart from that, I believe that one of the major areas that you'll have to understand here is in case there is some kind of legal issue that has arisen out of an IoT device, how will you subscribe legal liability? When you want to subscribe legal liability, one of the complicated scenarios in IoT is look at the interconnectedness. See, the image on the screen would be able to tell you, see, all these are interconnected devices that are connected to your IoT device. And you would have to, it is very difficult to prove that who is at fault, who is negligent in implementing, duty to care. What is the kind of level of care that has been demonstrated? So that's going to be a very ticklish question, shall I say, because duty of care is not just with regard to the connectivity, but also with regard to design, testing, manufacturing, labeling, distribution, and things like that. So I believe that no norms of there are no standard norms of care or norms of behavior, but it's going to be very interesting to kind of come up with some due diligence parameters for to determine the liability. And not just that, strict liability, of course, you have, but what happens in case of subscribing some kinds of vicarious liability or something which is contributory liability or something like that. So that's going to be a debatable question because it's a complex scenario altogether, given the kind of interconnectedness that the IoT has. So this is also something that I thought I should put forth here in this kind of discussion. Next slide, please. Now, IoT devices also would be bringing jurisdictional challenges when I talk of it from a legal perspective. The reason here is, let's say, for example, that the device is manufactured in country A, device is actually sold in country B, and it's purchased by a customer in country C, and it's used in another country D. Now, in case of any breach, now which jurisdiction will come into picture? That's going to be a complex scenario altogether. Because I just told you in a simplistic format, but just try to imagine if there is an interconnection of all these devices. And now, how will you determine the jurisdiction? Usually, jurisdiction, when you look at the principles of jurisdiction, where the contract takes effect, where either parties reside, now, or where the cause of action has arisen. Now, how will you determine the cause of action here? That's going to be wonderful because thanks to the internet has made geography a history. So that is an age-old dictum, but at your own risk and peril, I feel that the orientation with regard to jurisdiction has to open up, and it's a completely sticky wicket, and there will be a lot of questions in our mind specifically relating to jurisdiction. And I can tell you that the IoT ecosystem has painted everything in a different light altogether. While we're all in our sane senses when we try to talk of jurisdictional issues. Of course, the Indian IT Act has come up with a couple of sections which tell that irrespective of any nationality, if it's affecting a computer system, computer network, communication device, or a computer resource physically located in India, I can be tried under the Indian cyber law. Well, that's all under Section 75 of the IT Act and Section 1, subsection 2 of the IT Act. It's wonderful on the paper, but a lot of countries are now going for bilateral, unilateral treaties and arrangements. But at this point of time, I can tell you there is no holistic or cogent approach whatsoever with regard to the internet jurisdiction, and likewise with the Internet of Things jurisdiction. So this is, I believe, this cannot be taken in a partial mode. So, in Internet of Things and jurisdiction will be a very complex issue that we'll have to understand. So we cannot completely leave the doors of the entire house open, but I believe that these are going to be some kinds of big talking points that the lawmakers will have to consider. Next slide, please. So Internet of Things is also now electronic records. I was just trying to tell you a couple of minutes back when we started off. So thanks to that confirmation that it's an electronic record, now anything and everything that is recorded that is made available using these devices can be used as legally admissible evidence. Thanks to the concept of electronic evidence. Now we have the concept of digital evidence, which is mentioned under the Indian Evidence Act. The IT Act has gone ahead and actually tried to bring about amendments in different laws, of which the Indian Evidence Act is also one such law. So, whereby now, thanks to the latest Supreme Court judgment, where the Supreme Court, in the case of Arjun Pandit Rao, has held that in case you're trying to produce the electronic evidence in original, then there is no need of having any kind of certificate. But if you're trying to produce a copy of these evidence, it becomes a secondary evidence, and you would have to actually come up with 65B certificate. Now, the concept here is that these devices as such, no, you cannot take the Alexas as such to the court and then actually try to put them as evidence, direct evidence, because the reason is that they'll have to be stored somewhere in order to retrieve that. I believe that the service providers would have a log of these conversations, and with the help of the court, they can actually, with an order from the court or a warrant from the enforcement agencies, they will be able to release the recordings of these devices, because these devices absolutely evaporate the concept of privacy altogether, and they can be used as legal evidence. I also have some case studies to demonstrate the same. We'll look at those also, just to establish that these is also legal evidence specifically acceptable under Indian law. So you should have 65B certificate in case you copy the contents of these recordings on a pen drive, a hard disk, or on a particular what can I say, memory stick. So therefore, if it is not having any of them, you can produce the evidence as such. You can produce the IoT device as such in the court. Then you will not be required to produce a certificate. Now, the certificate typically should be given out by an examiner of electronic records. Two kinds of things that you require here. It's called a matter of fact and an expert opinion. Matter of fact is whatever you see, and then expert opinion is the expert of electronic evidence, specifically under Section 79A of the IT Act. There are a couple of labs that have been notified. The Central Forensic Science Laboratory in Hyderabad, the Army labs in Pune. There are also some of the labs which are actually given recognition under this examiner of electronic evidence. So that's something that I thought of bringing in this discussion. Next slide, please. Now, I thought I should just inform you about some of these very interesting case studies. Now, this all these are some things from the Western perspective. So I thought we should also discuss about the same in order to get some idea about how the legal evidence out of these devices is actually valued by different courts across the jurisdiction of across the global jurisdiction. So the first thing is that witness Alexa, which is an IoT-based device again, was actually called to give evidence in this murder investigation case that happened in Florida. Wow. A woman was actually killed with a spear in Florida in July 2019. And one of the primary evidence was the Alexa's recording. The Amazon Alexa is again an IoT based device. Accidentally, it was switched on. And then all the recordings were audio recordings were made available. And this was used as an evidence by the police and the enforcement agencies to actually crack the and solve the murder and bring the criminal to justice. So this is an interesting case study I thought of sharing with all of you of how IoT devices are capable of actually being called a witness, and then how the digital evidence among extracted from these are actually playing very important role in actually convicting criminals. Next slide, please. So the second important aspect I thought of telling you is that the geolocation data. Again, your mobile phone is also an IoT device. So considering your mobile phone to be an IoT device, I thought I should share this interesting case study with you. So in Denmark, 32 prisoners were released because the question here was how reliable is your geolocation data? So any geolocation data, I believe all of us know that you have a geolocation data option in your mobile phones and tablets. Now these are available in your mobile phone, and these are also available with your mobile operators. So how far are these going to be reliable? That's something that we'll all have to constantly be looking at, because there's a software. There were softwares that were able to tell that these data. These devices were connected to different towers at the same time. So lo and behold, if you're getting connected to 10 different towers at the same time, Can it be possible to actually rely on that kind of geolocation data? I believe no. So they could lead to a lot of wrongful convictions and things like that. More specifically in the Indian context, where it says that let 100 criminals be set free, but not even one innocent should be punished. So I think looking at that perspective, I believe that too much reliance on these geolocation data is also going to be complicated altogether. So this is something that I thought this is the other side of the coin, other side of the law. I thought of bringing on the table this interesting case. Let's go to the next slide. Now, this is one more instance where the Fitbits, I believe all of you are aware that Fitbits are your health related wearables that a lot of us make use of for the purpose of calculating different things, maybe your steps, it has speedometers, maybe your calories, maybe your other health related parameters. But this particular Fitbit data has solved a murder case in California. 90 years old man who was actually a suspect. He went to visit his stepdaughter's house, which is in California, San Jose, and then uh, fortunately or unfortunately, fortunate for us, unfortunate for that guy. So fortunate for the enforcement agency because this particular uh, victim had actually placed a Fitbit on her particular body, and it showed that the head and neck had some issues, and the Fitbit tracker showed that at the time of murder, there's a spike in her heart rate. So this was used as an evidence, and at that particular point of time, this 90-year-old man was also there at the premises where this woman. This particular woman was there. So they came to an understanding that this guy was the person who had actually committed the murder. And in this kind of a scenario, the Fitbit data played a very critical role in bringing bringing the criminal to justice. So these are just instances of just telling you how positively and how what are the drawbacks of IoT-based evidences. Next slide, please. Now, I thought I should share with you some of the IoT devices that are used by lawyers, specifically in India. We wear all kinds of wearables, whether it's your Fitbits or smartwatches. Now, think that's also something that I would want to tell you. Now, we use a lot of digital assistants, whether it's Alexa's, the Amazon Echoes, and Google Nests, Google Minis, and things like that, and also your Google Assist. We use smart gadgets like TVs, microwave ovens, refrigerators at our offices, typical lawyers' offices. And we also make use of the smart, wonderful automation tools that are made available. Whether it's your CC cameras, whether it's your home automation kind of a scenario. I believe that a lawyer should also be cognizant that a lot of client data can be extracted from these devices. So my sincere advice is that apart from being smart, also be cognizant and aware of the fact that this could be landing you up in legal trouble in case any of your clients' confidential information is getting out of your office with or without your knowledge. So this is also this is also a golden message I thought I should share with all the practicing lawyers. I believe that we shouldn't be sleeping away to glory. Next slide, please. So finally, I would like to just conclude by saying that IoT brings in huge amount of legal policy regulatory aspects on the table, and not just that. From a contractual perspective, see, when you make use of a device, typically you enter into a contract. You have some policies, you have some terms of use and terms and conditions of usage with respect to that device. So I wish to tell you that contractual issues also are likely to emerge, and it's going to be very interesting that a lot of countries have already started to peep in and look at different perspectives of coming up with IoT based dedicated laws to address the distinctive legal challenges being brought forth by IoT. Now, IoT is also likely to bring in huge amount of cyber security related issues because cyber security essentially runs on three pillars: confidentiality, integrity, and authenticity. So that be so, the IoT is also going to bring in huge amount of cyber security related issues, and what has to be the legal compliances, what has to be the kinds of due diligence is something that is likely to evolve. And more specifically, I can tell you that in India, when you talk about the legal position of IoT, the Indian cyber law can only be seen as a law on the eye. While it'll be very interesting to see how the complete laws, legislations, and the jurisprudence surrounding the IoT devices and IoT will evolve as time passes by. Specifically, given the fact that IoT has this intertwining discipline, and it can also be made use of, apart from getting interconnected with the devices, interconnected interoperability issues with regard to different technologies. For example, the artificial intelligence also can be made use of in an IoT device. So the combination of IoT device and AI will bring forth different legal challenges. Likewise, with 3D printing, where you create a model, if the model is an IoT based model, again, it has the capability of getting connected to the internet. There are going to be distinctive legal challenges. Likewise, with blockchain, I believe that these are some things that are not somewhere away in the horizon, but there are also some things that have already started to emerge. And there's no denying the fact that we'll have to pull out, the handguns, and there are lots of questions that the world has to answer. And what's emerging on the landscape is that these IoT devices, typically, to conclude, I can tell you that these IoT devices run on a concept of Alexander phenomena, where they see, where it's told that I see and I conquer. So the Alexander, typically, when you look at the history, he sees, and the moment he sees it, he feels that he has to conquer it. So likewise, these IoT devices, I believe, are going to have a lot of microphones embedded into them, and they'll start hearing and peeping into all kinds of conversations, private, social, personal, and all of these. And I believe that they will start interpreting this. We also had one of these cases, a very interesting case where a device was placed specifically during the work from home period. I got this case where the employee was attending to the official meetings where he had this IoT device in the same room, and lo and behold, that 2 days later he received a parcel from an e-commerce store, and he was so shocked to see that because he had never placed an order for the same. The IoT device heard the conversation, interpreted that there's a requirement of such and such an item, and went ahead and placed an order in the e-commerce store. I think these are just wake-up calls to just tell you that these are different agendas altogether. And of course, you'll be giving into your temptations of getting into these IoT devices. But what's really important is that we must also be aware of the kinds of do's and don'ts, and also try to talk about the sense of complexities that IoT brings into picture. And the royal singular message is that uh, uh, the moment you make use of something that is what can I say, that is technology enabled, I think you should also talk about, you should also understand the positives and the negatives, the do's and the don't. And in this kind of an environment, specifically from a legal perspective, I can tell you that we are all on the leap frogging steps, and we're all doing our journey across the internet highway. And shortly, we're also likely to see digital DNAs, which will be playing a very crucial role in determining cyber crimes and cyber criminals. So these are some key learnings and key parameters that I wish to tell you. And in your own powering position, I believe it's very important that you stay much ahead of the curve of these technical legal policy issues. So this is the key message that I wish to give all of you. So once again, I'm trying to tell you that this is going to be a very interesting gamut. It's a very fascinating journey, and let's all stay safe. Once we are fighting victorious against COVID-19, I believe that there's going to be a new cyber world order, and they're likely to emerge a lot of different cyber legal principles with the advent of the new cyber world order coming in. I'm going to see. I believe that there's going to be flooding issues on specifically cyber law, privacy, cyber security, and things like that. So these are some things that I thought of sharing with all of you. Once again, it's a very interesting and fascinating space to work on, and I believe constantly that webinars like this will bring forth discussions among the different stakeholders, and would bring on the table the different kinds of legal regulatory policy aspects as far as the emerging technologies are concerned. So once again, wanted to just thank the organizers, the Law Essentials, specifically Farhan, for this wonderful opportunity, and also the International Center for Intellectual Property Rights for this wonderful opportunity. So I'm open to any questions if you have. And it's been lovely talking to you all this evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. I think it was a very intriguing session for the audience. We have a few questions coming in from the audience. The first question from Uma Pillai. Mostly mobile gadgets are connected with other gadgets. If the mobile crashes or gets damaged, then what will happen to other gadgets which is being connected to it?
It's a wonderful question that is brought on the table. See, one of the most interesting scenarios that I'm trying to tell you is, see, it's very important that we don't connect on the same networks. That is something that we have to constantly be aware of, and try to take backups of the data wherever is available, wherever there's a possibility. But avoid making use of all kinds of, I mean, make your Wi-Fi passwords strong, keep changing them frequently. And I believe that do not download something which is not necessary, because the problem here is we do not understand the kind of nuances, the legal nuances. We start just downloading applications without looking at the requirements that have been sought during these applications. So it's see, there's no straitjacket formula, there's no magical principle, but basically, if you're able to stay reasonably secured, I believe that this will. The moment you notice that your phone is crashed, do change your Wi-Fi password immediately. Start disconnecting your other devices from the network so that there are, I mean, you're not prone to any of those attacks from your other devices as well.
Thank you so much, sir. We have the next question coming in from Abid Khan. When the device, especially a cell phone, gets damaged suddenly, we have to report it to a service center. What are the protections under the IT Act in case of the misuse of data by a service center staff?
Oh, that's a wonderful question that has been asked. Definitely, I can tell you that please take a backup of all the data that's been available, and see, the protection under IT Act is you have civil and criminal penalties that you can make use of. Your mobile phone is ultimately a computer under the IT Act. So if there is any kind of unauthorized access that has been made into your data, which is regarding your mobile phone, Section 43 of the IT Act can come into picture. You have also Section 66 of the IT Act, which would be a computer related offense. Then, if the service center tries to make use of your data because it's not their mobile phone, Section 66B can come into picture. And likewise, if they try to do any of the other activities like downloading, copying, extracting data, or doing anything like that, then Section 43A, 43 can come into picture. And all these mobile stores people are also legally obligated, because they're all intermediaries under the law. So they will have to exercise your due diligence. Otherwise, you can also sue them under Section 85 of the IT Act. So these are some things that I believe are there constantly there in these kind of scenarios. But what's very important and required is that keep making a backup of all your data. That's very important. So even if the data cannot be retrieved, at least you're safe that the data is you're having a copy of the same, basically.
Thank you so much, sir. The next question coming in from Vivek Jaiswal. Is Fitbit type of evidence admissible in a court of law?
Definitely, it is admissible, because anything and everything created out of these IoT devices becomes an electronic record under the IT Act. So once it becomes an electronic record, you have Section 65, which is talking about admissibility of digital evidence. So if your evidence is having, if you're taking a copy of the Fitbit data, then you would require a 65B certificate to be produced, and otherwise you can produce the Fitbit as such as an evidence in the court of law. So that should not have any. I don't see any reason why it should not be legally admissible.
Thank you so much, sir. The last question for this very brainstorming evening. Purva Gandhi, what suggestions will you give to college students who are interested in cyber laws?
See, it's a wonderful and fascinating gamut, and I believe that it's going to be your life companion, because given the present adoption of technology in all walks of life, I believe that cyber laws is going to be very interesting. I would start advising college students to look at a couple of things. First thing, try to enhance your technical knowledge. Also, start gaining some information on the working of technology, like how these technologies operate, and try also expanding your technical knowledge. Also try to understand about cyber security, because cyber security law is now something that's already started to emerge. So look at try understanding something about the basics of cyber security. That's also something that I would like to recommend. Technology understanding about cyber security, And the third thing, please also try to constantly understand about the digital evidence and the parameters, because now when you look at litigation that's likely to come up post COVID-19, I see that it's going to be digital evidence to a large extent. So try to understanding about digital evidence, try to understand about what are the procedures under required under law for digital evidence. There are some labs. So I would also advise you to do some internships presently in these areas, so that you can gain more practical knowledge apart from gaining theoretical knowledge. So these are some things that I would like to just tell you. And please try to identify something that because this is a technology based law, just like we had the Indian Telegraph Act, which was a technology based law. After 115 years, because the Indian Telegraph Act was in 1885, 115 years later, in 2000, the IT Act has come into picture. So I believe that if you're in your college days, it's something that's your age, or it's something that is less than your age. So I believe that it's a new generation law, and you can start getting into this fancied law, but you have to really keep yourself aware of how technology operates and works. So please upgrade your skills. There are lots of these courses, free courses available on Udemy and Upgrade and things like that, where you try to understand. You don't need to have a formal education kind of a thing, but I would advocate you to understand the basics of technology, basics of internet, how technology and internet operate, and basically, if you are able to connect them with the legal analysis, I think there is nothing like it. So this is the key piece of advice I would give to college students.
Thank you so much, sir. We have come to the end of the session. It was a really enlightening and enriching session, and the audience have really liked you throughout the course of the session. Thank you so much for
Thank
your
you.
association with us and always being there for our team, sir.
Thank you so much, Farhan. And personally, I must thank him for a wonderful initiative. And I must also thank all the team of Law Essentials, because they've been doing exceedingly well. And I wish them all success in their new endeavor of the International Center for Intellectual Property Laws. And I believe that a lot of cutting edge work has to also happen in terms of IPR and emerging technologies. And wishing them all success in all their endeavors. Thank you. It's been lovely talking to you all this evening.
Thank you so much, sir. I would also like to take this opportunity to introduce the 27th edition of the webinar. The topic for the session will be the need of space laws and future of human settlement in space. The link of the same has been shared in the chat box. I wish to see you all over there. Thank you so much for attending this session.